of action whatsoever, but once again, some sort of explosion in Kuwait City, and we can see the end result of that, the smoke that's beginning to billow across the skyline of Kuwait City. I understand there's also some tracer fire in Baghdad now unfolding as well. Tracer fire usually suggesting, Nick Robertson, that there's anti-aircraft fire going up from Iraqi positions in Baghdad. Usually that suggests that perhaps more U.S. aircraft are on the way with more bombs. Nick, I'm sorry I interrupted you that time, but as you can tell, there's some activity going on here in Kuwait City. We're attempting to determine precisely what that is, the smoke beginning to dissipate, but we did hear an explosion, some sort of explosion, in downtown Kuwait City just a few minutes ago. Nick, as we hear the tracer fire and the anti-aircraft fire going up in Baghdad, that seems to suggest the Iraqis have indications that U.S. warplanes are on the way. Is that the normal pattern?
That's the normal pattern. That's what we were seeing when we were there last week. And what one sees is the tracer fire coming up from the periphery of the city. And what we can hear, listening to the sound being picked up on those microphones there in the camera positions right in the center of Baghdad, you can hear small amounts of tracer fire on the outskirts of the city. Then when the tracer fire sounds much louder, you can see it much more clearly. That shows that the Iraqi defensive forces believe that that attack is coming much closer to the center of the city. We saw on several occasions a tracer fire only starting up on the outskirts of the city. Then the bombing took place on the outskirts. When the tracer fire got loud and started up in the center of the city, then the explosions happened in the center of the city. So this would seem to indicate possibly here, Wolf, that an attack is perceived by the Iraqi authorities, an attack likely again on the center of Baghdad. And already that's what we've seen this evening, an explosion perhaps half an hour ago lighting up the sky of Baghdad, an explosion that appeared to be close to the Ministry of Information, certainly centered around some government buildings, Wolf.
All right, Nick, stand by for a minute. I want to bring in General Shepard, our military analyst, retired U.S. Air Force Major General Don Shepard. General Shepard, as you hear about that bombing, if it was in fact a bombing at that marketplace, this other location in Baghdad with more than 50 people killed, according to eyewitnesses, as well as hospital workers in the area, the Central Command refusing to say the U.S. had anything to do with that. What goes through your mind?
Well, first, Wolf, it's evident that the Central Command did not target downtown Baghdad and a market. That's simply something that's not going to happen for reasons that are obvious to everyone that understands U.S. military. It could be an errant bomb. It could be an errant missile. It also could be anti-aircraft fire. We have seen it fired from the ground. You see those flashes in the sky. Every anti-aircraft shell is designed to explode in the sky so it does not come back and hit the ground. It could be an anti-aircraft shell fired by the Iraqis. It could also be a surface-to-air missile that takes off and goes errant and falls into the market. I cannot tell, and you probably can't tell unless you do a ground investigation to see the pieces of the weapon itself and measure craters, that type of thing, Wolf.
And General Shepard, as our viewers look at these pictures of downtown Kuwait City, that's where I am. Just within the past few minutes, we heard a thud, some sort of explosion, some sort of activity going on. We see some smoke continuing to billow, although it's dissipated considerably over the past few minutes. There have been, as you well know, about 10 or 12 missiles that have been launched at various targets here in Kuwait over the past week or so, almost all of them intercepted by Patriot air defense missiles successfully. I can tell you, I heard that explosion. There's no sign that it was a missile, although that certainly can't be ruled out. There have been no air raid sirens that have been gone off here in Kuwait City. As you look at the pictures of Kuwait City, General Shepard, does that look like the end result, perhaps of some sort of missile that may have hit downtown Kuwait City?
Unable to tell, Wolf. It could be a missile that was missed by the Patriot baddies. It could also be some type of terrorist attack. If I had to guess without knowing anything, and this is almost stupid to guess, I would have guessed it's some type of terrorist attack as opposed to a missile, because no air raid warning and no reports of Patriot firings.
I got to tell you, General, in case anybody's worried about me, that explosion, and I can see the end result from where I am several miles away, but I can see the smoke billowing as I look over the skyline. So it's not anywhere near where I happen to be, although I certainly heard it, and I certainly could see the end result of it, but I have no idea what it was. We're attempting to determine precisely what it was, but we definitely did hear some sort of explosion. We see the smoke, the end result of whatever that was here in Kuwait City. You can look at these live pictures and begin to get a flavor of what's going on. We have these pictures of Baghdad and Kuwait City. As you know, General, Kuwait has been very supportive of the United States in this war against Iraq, and as a result, no love lost between the Iraqi government and the government here in Kuwait. Presumably that's why the Iraqis have launched at least 10 or 12 missiles against Kuwait over the past week, although we did hear from U.S. military sources yesterday that one key launcher used in those missile attacks against targets here in Kuwait near Basra was destroyed by a U.S. A-10 Thunderbolt aircraft only yesterday. Go ahead, General.
Well, that's true, Wolf. It's a big desert out there, so it would not be impossible for irregular forces to sneak a missile in and launch it into Kuwait. You're right, there's no love lost between the two countries. Remember also we had an explosion in downtown Doha in Qatar here a couple of weeks ago, and it turned out to be some type of natural gas explosion down there. So there's all sorts of possibilities, and of course everyone's on hair trigger, everyone's listening for sirens, and everyone's guessing, Wolf.
All right, General Shepard, stand by. I want to show our viewers what has happened in Baghdad over the past half hour, 45 minutes or so. First of all, there was a huge explosion that rocked apparently the Ministry of Information in downtown Baghdad. I want our viewers to take a look at this one. And then there was a smaller explosion in Baghdad a little bit after that. We're trying to determine precisely where that location was. Nick Robertson is helping us. He's standing by. He's watching all of this as well. He's in nearby Jordan along the border with Iraq. It looks like the people of Baghdad, Nick, are getting no let-up tonight.
Certainly that seems to be the case, Wolf. And I was very interested listening to General Don Shepard there. He raised a very important issue. We were talking a little earlier as well, not about this latest blast that appears to be very, very close to the Iraq's Ministry of Information in the center of Baghdad. We were talking a little earlier about a blast in a suburban neighborhood several miles west of the city center, a blast that Iraqi officials say killed 51 people. Certainly we cannot confirm that figure. But General Shepard raised an important issue. He said that to find out what happened there, it would be necessary to look at bomb fragments. And what we have seen in the past is Iraqi officials, when they have fragments of cruise missiles or other coalition munitions that have come down, they've been very quick to put those on television and show those. And what we have not seen associated with this blast earlier this evening, and what we did not see associated with the blast in a market yesterday in Baghdad, we have not seen Iraqi officials come out and show parts of coalition munitions that might have been associated with that particular damage. Of course, even if they did, it would be very difficult to know whether those particular munitions had been found at that location or not. But we haven't seen that, and that is perhaps, again, another way where we can try and analyze, try and find out exactly what has happened at these locations. Of course, today in this suburban neighborhood, in this market area, Iraqi officials blaming coalition forces for the explosion. Coalition forces saying absolutely they cannot confirm that they had missiles in that area, and the same situation in the marketplace yesterday, Wolf.
All right, Nick, stand by. I want to bring back General Shepard. And General Shepard, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening here in Kuwait City for viewers who may just be tuning in. Within the past few minutes, we heard a loud explosion in Kuwait City. Then we saw smoke billowing over the skyline of downtown Kuwait City. I'm hearing fire engines, but no sirens, no air raid sirens going off. No indication that there is any serious danger right now, but we are attempting to find out precisely what was hit, if in fact this was an explosion, if this was an Iraqi missile. We know that about a dozen have been launched against various targets in Kuwait over the past week. This new generation, General Shepard, of these Patriot air defense missiles, they've worked remarkably well this time around as opposed during the first Gulf War a dozen years ago. Why are they so much better now?
Well, Wolf, it's true they're working better if it is as reported. Remember, during the Gulf War, the reports were also and looking at the pictures on the screen, it looked like that they were very successful. Then in after-action studies, we found out that almost none of the Patriots actually hit the missiles. This time it appears to be changed. The new PAC-3 missile that is reportedly deployed in Kuwait and being moved forward as well has improved battle management capabilities capability. That means that the radars are able to get the missile much further out in range, to sort it from other things that are appearing on the radar scope, and to engage it further out. And then the increased hit capability results from improved software and also improved hardware. So it appears, at least if the reports are correct, it's very successful. Couple of other observations, Wolf. The air defense system has been very, very good. Remember, the missile launch warning goes to Colorado Springs and then is relayed, and the sirens are turned on as a result of warning about missile launch picked up from satellites out in space. Those sirens have been very accurate every time there's been a missile attack, leading me to believe that either the system didn't work this time or perhaps it was something other than a missile, Wolf. But I'm only guessing from thousands of miles away, looking through a simple soda straw at a plume of smoke. So back to you, Wolf.
And we're getting indications now from Kuwaiti authorities, General Shepard, that yes, this was in fact some sort of missile that may have struck downtown Kuwait. We're attempting to get more information about this. If this was a missile that hit Kuwait City, it would be the first time. All of the other missiles, the ground-to-ground missiles that have been fired over the past week, have either been intercepted by Patriot air defense missiles or have fallen harmlessly into the Persian Gulf, the waters of the Persian Gulf, or into the sands of the Kuwaiti desert. Most of the missiles, though, almost all of them, in fact, have been intercepted. If, in fact, this is a missile that did successfully hit downtown Kuwait City, it would be the first such successful hit by, presumably, by an Iraqi launcher, if in fact that is what it is. Once again, all of this information is coming in very, very sporadically. We're trying to determine precisely what happened. This is all I know for sure. The only thing I know for sure is that about a half an hour ago or so, I did hear a loud explosion here in Kuwait City. That was followed by billowing smoke that came up over the skyline. Other than that, we are attempting to get more information from Kuwaiti authorities and from U.S. authorities as well. The situation in Kuwait, of course, serious, but at least no sirens have gone off suggesting that there's any potential danger to the residents of this city, this capital of Kuwait, here in Kuwait. But Kuwaiti officials confirming now that a missile has in fact struck Kuwait City. We're attempting to figure out precisely where, precisely how much damage, and precisely what's going on right now. All that information, of course, is still very, very sketchy. When you hear about this, General Shepard, what goes through your mind?
Well, all of the missiles that we have seen launched so far have been of two types of Wolf. One is the Ababil 100 missile. It's a ground-to-ground missile with a range of 40 or 50 miles and an impact warhead that throws shrapnel out. Those are the ones that have been intercepted. Also, early on, we had versions of a Chinese-made silkworm missile, apparently, that were launched. I believe a couple of those came on early in the war, and ground troops saw that missile. But all of them apparently were intercepted by Patriot missiles or allowed to fall harmlessly in the desert as they predicted impacts were not going to be in populated areas. So again, we're going to have to wait and watch and diagnose what type of missile, Wolf.
We're getting some more information, General Shepard. It seemed that there was no advance warning, no sirens went off here in Kuwait City because this particular missile, and we have confirmed now from Kuwaiti authorities that it was a missile, was coming in at a very low altitude, which suggests it could have been one of those silkworm or sea-to-sea types of missiles, sea-to-land types of missiles. Is that what it possibly could have been, General Shepard?
It could have been that. The silkworm is a Chinese-made missile. It is an anti-ship missile designed to be fired from the shore onto ships out over the water, but of course it can also be directed at land. So that is one possibility, and of course those things still should be picked up by the missile launch system and relayed, but there may not have been time depending upon how close it was launched from, Wolf.
We know that the Iraqis would love to be able to hit Kuwait given the animosity between these two countries. We got a closer view now of what apparently was hit here in Kuwait City. We're going to show our viewers these scenes from downtown Kuwait. I don't see any more smoke, at least a little bit of smoke billowing from it. But once again, Kuwaiti officials confirming that a missile has in fact struck Kuwait City. We're going to continue to monitor what's happening here, what's happening in Baghdad as well. A lot of news unfolding. Lou Dobbs is going to have much more coming up on the war in Iraq.
My camera.
Lou Dobbs will be back right after this break.
So, you want to open a checking account?
Yes, but I don't want to...
Iraq, the new military launching point, plus the unexpected Iraqi opposition, why a war may last longer than expected. We're live from the front lines. CNN Tonight, 7 Eastern.
A number of major developments tonight in the war against Saddam Hussein. A huge explosion, as Wolf Blitzer has just reported, in the center of Kuwait City. Kuwaiti authorities say it was a missile strike. Wolf Blitzer will have the very latest for us. Also today, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld raising troubling new concerns and issues, telling Syria and Iran to stay out of the war against Saddam Hussein. The Secretary of Defense said Syrian military shipments to Iraq are, quote, a hostile act. And over this coming hour, we'll focus as well on the latest steps in the military campaign, battlefield reports, the logistical challenge of supplying our troops, and war, politics, and the media. There was another big strike as well against Baghdad tonight. It appears the Ministry of Information was hit again by very heavy ordnance. General Don Shepard will join us with his assessment of the bombing campaign on the Iraqi capital. Military officials say coalition airstrikes on the Medina Republican Guard Division have reduced its effectiveness by a third. Tonight, Apache helicopters from the 101st Airborne Division carrying out their first long-range assault into Iraq. Our reporters will have action reports from the battlefields in northern and southern Iraq. 3 Marine battalions are fighting to win control of the town of Nasiriyah. Commanders say they are very close to securing the city, but another 4 Marines were reported killed. Alicia Venci will have a report from the front lines in Nasiriyah. More than 1,000 Iraqi civilians who tried to escape from Basra were shelled and machine gunned by Iraqi forces today. British troops tried to protect the civilians, in fact, interposed themselves between the Iraqis firing on the civilians. Diana Muriel will have the story for us. She's with the British forces in southern Iraq. And a British supply ship has finally arrived at the port of Qasr in southern Iraq, carrying 200 tons of humanitarian aid for Iraqi civilians. Christiane Amanpour to have the report. But first, here is what is happening at this hour. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld says the war in Iraq is proceeding as planned. Rumsfeld was responding to a suggestion by a senior ground commander in Iraq. Lieutenant General William Wallace told the Washington Post that, quote, the enemy we're fighting is different from the one we had war-gamed against, end quote. U.S. officials tell CNN's Andrea Koppel that Iraqi sleeper cells are plotting against U.S. interests overseas. They say 2 active plots have been foiled over the past few days. One of those plots was taking shape somewhere in the Persian Gulf. The officials say sleeper cells are actively planning terrorist attacks in at least 10 other countries. The man who searched for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq is retiring. Hans Blix says he will leave his job as chief UN weapons inspector when his contract expires in June. Blix will turn 75 years of age in June. He's expected to return to his home in Stockholm. A hijacked Turkish airliner is reportedly on the ground in Athens, Greece. The aircraft was hijacked while on a domestic flight from Istanbul to Ankara. 203 people aboard the plane, including several senior Turkish diplomats. At this point, nothing is known about the hijackers nor their motive. There was a huge explosion in Kuwait City tonight. The Kuwaiti authorities, at least initially, have confirmed that the city was hit by a missile. Joining me now from Kuwait City is our Wolf Blitzer. Wolf, what more do we know about this attack?
Well, we're getting indications now. It hit a shopping mall here in Kuwait City, a shopping mall called the Souk Shark. That's a very popular mall here in Kuwait City. We don't know precisely the extent of the damage. We are beginning to get all those first reports, but I can tell you from personal experience, having lived through this explosion about a half hour, 45 minutes or so ago, I heard a loud thud, a loud explosion. And then within a few seconds after that, we began to see billowing smoke come up over the skyline over Kuwait City. Now, Kuwait authorities are telling us that it was in fact a missile that hit this area, this mall, this shopping mall in Kuwait City. We're attempting to get confirmation of that. If it was a missile, it would be the first time over the past week that a missile did in fact hit a target, cause some damage here in Kuwait, because all of the other dozen or so missiles that have been launched from Iraq by Iraqis have been either intercepted by Patriot anti-aircraft air defense missiles, or they've fallen harmlessly into the waters or the desert. If in fact this was an Iraqi missile, it did successfully hit a commercial area, this shopping mall, the Shark. It's called the Souk Shark here in Kuwait City, and as I can say, it caused a huge explosion. Don't know the extent of damage. The only thing I could say is it's the middle of the night here. It's after 2 a.m. now, so presumably the Shark Mall was pretty empty in the middle of the night, stores closed, so presumably wouldn't cause too many civilian casualties. But once again, I can hear the fire engines, I can hear the sirens going off from police cars. There was no warning in advance, Lou, no warning whatsoever. Almost every other time that a missile has been launched against Kuwait, we heard the air raid sirens go off. People went into the underground bunkers. Some, in fact, started to put on their protective gear. Certainly that was the case at U.S. bases up in the northern part of Kuwait. But in this particular case, we heard nothing, no air raid siren, no advance warning. The first indication that there was a problem was the actual explosion that apparently has rocked this shopping mall here in Center City in downtown Kuwait City. Lou.
Wolf, you're located very near the port of Kuwait, the famous spires of Kuwait City, just beyond your position there. How far would you judge the distance to be between yourself and the impact area?
I would say it's a good at least 2 miles or so from where I am right now. I can certainly see the smoke billowing up, and I certainly heard it. But I'm a good distance away from that, from where that explosion occurred at that mall, that shopping mall. As I say, Lou, it's a very popular mall. People go there. A lot of U.S. stores, chain stores there. It's like a mall, like almost any mall you would find in the United States. Major department stores, as well as a lot of smaller boutique shops, fast food restaurants. It's a mall. It's an American-style mall, and that Souk Shark, as it's called, Souk means marketplace in Arabic, is a very, very popular place. That was in fact the explosion occurred at that shopping mall. We're not 100% convinced yet it is a missile. That's what Kuwaiti authorities are telling us. But in the meantime, we'll wait for more definitive word and get some indication from not only Kuwaiti authorities, but U.S. military authorities who are here on the scene as well. As you know, the United States has been trying to protect Kuwait in this current war with Iraq. The Iraqi government, of course, targeting Kuwait, given Kuwait strong support for the United States and Britain in the war.
Well, thank you very much, Wolf. We will be coming back to you as you learn more details about what appears to be an attack, a missile attack against Kuwait City. But again, those are initial reports, as Wolf has underlined and stressed here, and we'll be obviously working to gain more details as quickly as possible. Coalition forces tonight launched another strike against Baghdad, and it was a heavy bombardment. Huge explosion in the city center. It appeared the Ministry of Information was hit by a coalition missile or bomb. Joining me now for more on this air campaign is our CNN military analyst, General Don Shepard. General, that's an extraordinary explosion that we just saw earlier in Baghdad today. What do you, was that an unusual ordinance in your judgment?
Not an unusual ordinance, Lou. It appeared to me to be either a surface explosion of a 2,000-pound bomb, which we've seen all along, or perhaps a 5,000-pound bomb. That's what we call a deep digger or penetrator that goes beneath the ground. But it was definitely a large explosion and appeared to be directed at this Ministry of Information, Lou.
And the strike target, apparently, again, communications centers. It's taken a while in the judgment of some for the coalition to attack those communications targets. Why now, do you think?
Well, I think early on they were watching and trying to get intelligence from them to see, particularly after the original leadership strike, to see who was still alive. Now they are beginning to attack them from a coalition standpoint, and they're very difficult to put down all the means of communication. You have numerous sites located around the city that can pop up, and also you can put them into mobile trucks, although they won't have the range that normal television does on top of buildings. They're a very difficult target, and you just have to keep hitting them, Lou.
General, I'm going to interrupt you. We're going to go back to Kuwait City. General, if I may ask you to stand by with us, we're going to go to the impact site of what appears to have been a missile strike against Kuwait City, and our Sanjay Gupta is on the scene there. Sanjay, can you hear me?
Excuse me,
Sanjay, can you hear me? General Shepard, obviously we have not quite got communications linked up with Sanjay Gupta, who is on the scene now, and as soon as we do, we're going to go back to him. Again, to repeat, apparently a missile has struck the center of Kuwait City just about a half hour ago. We do not know whether there have been injuries. We do not know, in fact, that it was a missile, but those are the early reports. There were no air raid sirens, as Wolf Blitzer reported, but authorities, Kuwaiti authorities, saying that it was a missile strike. So we will be going to Sanjay Gupta on the scene, Wolf Blitzer in Kuwait City, just as soon as we establish communications there. General Shepard, I want to turn back to you and turn from now Baghdad to Kuwait City. The Patriot missile system to this point had appeared to be perfect, striking incoming missiles that had been launched against Kuwait City. What do you make of what's happened here tonight?
Couple of possibilities here, Lou. Remember, it's supposedly been 12 for 12 so far. Evidently, the system missed this, if indeed it's as reported. Now, remember, these missile launch warnings go by satellite to Colorado Springs, the NORAD command center there, and are relayed to the theater. Also, you can have Patriot missile radars watching for them, as well as other radars in the theater.
General, I'm told, I apologize again, I am told that we now do have a communications link with Sanjay Gupta in Kuwait City at the impact area from that missile strike. We'll try it again. Sanjay, can you hear me? Sanjay?
Yeah, I can hear you. We are standing here just underneath the sort of portico of a large shopping mall in Kuwait City. There had been some concern. There was a loud explosion, as you know, and some smoke several minutes ago, maybe half an hour ago now. What appears to have happened here is an explosion from the ground. This does not appear to be an explosion that came from something from the air. Again, this does not appear to be a missile, but rather an explosion, maybe even a that was parked under the portico. There is lots of debris, glass has flown around. The actual structure of this portico, which is supported by very, very thick concrete walls, appears to have been significantly damaged, along with all of the light fixtures all around this very, very significant explosion. There is debris scattered for hundreds of meters. People are immediately starting to run now. I don't know why. There has been a concern about gas, obviously, around here. We are all running now. Sirens going off. Not exactly sure. People are keeping their distance now from the site. We're going to obviously try and figure out why that was as well. But again, it does appear to be maybe a bomb of some sort. Maybe a car bomb, although I cannot find the charred remains of a car close by. We're going to continue to look for that. So it's such a significant explosion. Things have been thrown literally all over the place here. No one seems to be hurt, as far as I can tell. There are not ambulances rushing up. Most of the vehicles are standing by, it seems, at this time. Back to you.
Sanjay, no apparent injuries as a result of this strike. You said it appears to you that the strike. Okay, I understand that we have lost Sanjay. We're going to go back to him just as soon as we can bring those communications links back. General Shepard, you just heard Sanjay Gupta say it appeared to him that this explosion originated on the ground rather than as a result of a missile, and I presume that is because as he reported, he's beneath a portico, and that seems to be, based on his initial report, if you will, the epicenter of the explosion. What do you make of that?
Well, it's making a little more sense to me now, Lou, if indeed these reports are correct. Remember, the air raid warning system in Kuwait has been very robust and very accurate. The Patriot missiles have been very accurate. This, without an air raid warning, could have been a terrorist attack. And when you have a terrorist attack, you see those people running, the immediate thing you think about is if you close in on the initial explosion, there may be other bombs planted around, satchel bombs or car bombs in the area to injure people that come to the site. Further, remember a couple of weeks ago we had a natural gas explosion down in downtown Doha, Qatar, and this could be the same thing. We're still searching and trying to sort through it, Lou.
Okay, and General Don Shepard will be back with us later in this broadcast as we assess a number of developments today in both Iraq and now, in the course of the past 45 minutes, Kuwait City. General Shepard, thank you very much. We're going to turn now to our reporter Ryan Chilcote, who is with the 101st Airborne Division, and I'm told now that we have resumed our communication link with Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sanjay, can you tell us any more? Have you moved farther away from the explosion site?
Yes, I have moved further away, as did everybody else. Again, this is sort of it's an interesting situation. I was looking immediately when I got over here to see if there was some evidence. We're just I'm about maybe 500 meters away, and I'm just stepping on shrapnel and glass, even this far away now. Anyways, I was looking for any evidence that this may have come from the sky versus the ground. Again, the top structure of this large, very Western-looking shopping mall, just like any mall that people might see back in the United States, it appears to be relatively intact. I'm talking to a eyewitness here who speaks a Arabic Hindi mix, and he is telling me that he thinks something actually dropped from the sky now. I have no evidence of that, but several people are looking into a canal of water, which is maybe about 50 meters from the shopping mall, saying that an explosion actually emanated from there, and in fact a missile landed in this body of water, creating a huge explosion. Don't have any evidence of that. The structures in between this body of water and the shopping mall appear to be intact at this point, so hard to say exactly what, from where this explosion came, again, from the sky or from the ground. We're still trying to figure that out. A little bit challenging now, as there was some concern and everyone ran away from the actual site. There is only the smell of carbon in the air. There is no other smell as far as any other kind of chemical agents or anything like that. We don't have any evidence of that. There is no one wearing gas masks at this time, including the security personnel and the officials that appear to be from the Kuwait government. And we're obviously going to be keeping a close eye on those as well. Our next goal really is to try and figure out exactly where this explosion came, from the water 100 meters away from the shopping mall or from the portico of the shopping mall itself. We're going to get back to you on that as soon as we can figure that out over the next few minutes.
And Sanjay, even though it appears that the explosion may have been centered somewhat distant from some distance from the your original thought, there's still no signs of injuries to anyone in that area?
There really isn't. We drove up on the scene pretty quickly. As I mentioned, all of the vehicles were actually moving towards. We did not see any ambulances racing off. There are several, maybe 50 or so vehicles with sirens and ambulance and lights and horns on them. We don't see any of them rushing off at this time. I have talked to a couple of people to ask them if they saw anyone get hurt. They said no. It is late here, as you know, Wolf. This shopping mall likely was not open. It is almost 2:30 in the morning. This happened probably maybe just before 2 in the morning. We don't see any evidence of injuries at this time.
And is there Sanjay, a chemical detection unit there on the site?
The chemical detection units that I am used to seeing from my time in Iraq, I have not seen at this point. But like I said, there are several Kuwaiti officials, perhaps from a nuclear, biological, chemical team around the area. They may have been the ones that told us to get back, but they also don't have masks on. So I'm not sure what they know that I don't know, but they're not wearing their masks at this point. There does appear to be a tanker truck, a very large tanker truck rolling up right now with sirens on. We're going to figure out what that truck is doing here and what its purpose is as well. Lou?
Sanjay, we'll get back to you in just a matter of moments. Thank you, Sanjay Gupta, reporting from the site of that blast, a Kuwait City mall, and apparently a somewhat broader area than we were first led to believe. Debris, Sanjay Gupta reports, spread over at least an area of 500 meters. So we will be going back to him as he gathers more details and facts about what appears to be now, certainly it's in question, but what appears to be a missile strike against Kuwait City. Coalition troops, meanwhile, are advancing on targets across Iraq tonight. The 101st Airborne has completed its first offensive from deep inside Iraq. Ryan Chilcote and his photographer, Greg Danilenko, are with the 101st. Ryan has details on the targets that the 101st hit in tonight's attacks. Ryan?
Sure, the 101st Airborne's Aviation Regiment has completed its first deep attack, and what a deep attack is sending its Apache attack helicopters. In this case, it's Apache attack longbow helicopters. That's the new version of the Apache attack helicopter, a very sophisticated helicopter. Dozens of them southwest of Baghdad, about 100, well, in the vicinity of 100 miles southwest of Baghdad, to destroy remnants of an armored Iraqi brigade in that area. I have learned since they got back, they are all now back, that they destroyed some APCs, some tanks, and a lot of other vehicles in the area. Also, they tell me that the Air Force was involved. There were perhaps some British Air Force and U.S. Air Force in the area. Now, real quickly, two slight mishaps on this mission. As the helicopters were leaving, one helicopter just shortly after it left came back, apparently because of some kind of mechanical problem. It's very strange to see that, particularly with all the other helicopters continuing on, and landed right here at the airfield, right where I am right now, apparently in brownout conditions. And I know we've talked about this a lot recently, but for those who don't know, what brownout is when a pilot tries to land his helicopter but can't quite see the ground because the dust, the sand here in the desert is so fine that it kicks up with those rotors moving around so quickly, and the pilot simply can't see the ground as he's landing. Well, that's what happened, and that helicopter rolled. That also happened again when the helicopters came back. Again, one of the helicopters rolled. Very dangerous stuff. These are very sophisticated helicopters, a lot of moving parts, and that could be very dangerous. Thankfully, all those pilots are okay. In the case of one pilot, I am told he may have a broken leg, but that's not so bad considering what could have happened. Now, I actually have one of the pilots with me. He was on that mission. This is quite an extraordinary opportunity. I'd like to talk with him about what he saw. What was it like?
It was pretty spectacular. I mean, went up there as briefed. Our artillery hit like, you know, it was planned on. You could see it in the distance. Got in there. A couple of our teams immediately got contact with enemy vehicles of some sort. I didn't see it actually. Shot those targets. Called in to our attack air, a fighter in the sky, running some F-18 Hornets that dropped some 500-pound bombs on the first set of targets. That team left. Second company came in. Again, found targets almost immediately. Found a small column of tanks, 5 or 6. Shot one of those to market, and then I believe it was British Harriers. I'm not sure, British or Marines. Harriers came in right as we were leaving the area and dropped, I'd say, half a dozen bombs right on it. So,
I know you've flown for 2 decades now, and you told me this is your first combat mission.
Yeah.
What was it like in comparison to what you expected? And describe it sort of as the pilot inside the cockpit.
It was pretty much. I've seen tapes from Desert Storm and other areas, so it was pretty much like that. It was everything I expected, and it was a lot different. It was a lot, I don't know, it was a lot quieter. I wasn't as nervous as I thought it'd be, and it went by very quickly.
You're flying low when you fly. I mean, I think people don't really have an idea of what it's like inside an Apache.
Yeah, we were basically at 50 feet. We were doing moving fire so that they could have a chance to shoot at us between 50 and 80 knots. So that's where most of my attention was, flying the aircraft that low to the ground. Because we don't get to train that way quite very often.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Well, Lou, that's all I have here from the 101st Airborne's forward operating base in central Iraq. Back to you.
Ryan Chilcote with the 101st, which apparently carrying out a successful mission on its first helicopter attack of the campaign. We're going to go to Wolf Blitzer just about 45 minutes ago, a little more than that now. A missile, according to Kuwaiti authorities, struck downtown Kuwait City. Wolf, what more do you have for us?
Well, Lou, Kuwaiti authorities continue to say it was a missile that flew in and hit downtown Kuwait City, this shopping mall. It's called the Souk Shark, a very popular Western-style mall. Here it's the middle of the night after 1 a.m., and now it's after 2 a.m. Here in Kuwait City. Unclear how much damage. Our Sanjay Gupta is there on the scene. He says it doesn't look like it came from the sky. It looks like it came from the ground. And as a result, it could have been some sort of bombing in the sense of a terrorist kind of car bombing or whatever. The bottom line is it's totally unclear right now what the cause of this explosion is, whether it was a missile, whether it was a bomb that was planted in this shopping mall or near this shopping mall. We're told that there's extensive damage to the cinema, to the movie theater at the mall, the Al-Sharqiya movie theater as it's called. At the mall. No one, of course, was there. No one was at the mall in the middle of the night. All the stores were closed. The movie theater was closed as well. Sanjay Gupta suggesting, though, that there's a strong smell of smoke. We could see the smoke billowing over the Kuwaiti skyline, obviously for some time after I personally heard that huge explosion that rocked this city. But at this point, I think it's fair to say we're getting conflicting information about what the cause of the explosion might have been. We're going to wait to get some more specific information. Then we'll have some hard evidence. Eyewitnesses on the scene say that they think they saw a missile come in from Iraq, from the Fa Peninsula. That's not far from Qasr. But at this point, it's all very sketchy. And I don't think we should draw any hard and fast conclusions yet. We'll wait for some more definitive answers before we do that. Lou?
Okay, thank you very much, Wolf. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld will be going back to Wolf and to Sanjay Gupta in Kuwait City as we learn more about what appears to be a successful missile strike by the Iraqis against downtown Kuwait City. No report of injuries, but we will be going back as we learn more about that missile strike, if indeed it turns out that's what it is. Defense Secretary Rumsfeld today warned Syria and Iran to stay out of the war against Saddam Hussein. The Secretary of Defense accused Syria of sending military supplies to Iraq. He also warned Iran to stay out of the conflict. Barbara Starr reports.
It was a public warning to Iraq's neighbors to stay out of the fight. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld warning Syria and Iran that the U.S. is watching their activities. The secretary had the sharpest criticism of the Damascus government. He said Syria is shipping military supplies, including night vision goggles, into Iraq.
We consider such trafficking as hostile acts and will hold the Syrian government accountable for such shipments.
Rumsfeld refused to be drawn into a discussion of whether the U.S. would move against Syria.
So are you threatening military action against Syria?
I'm saying exactly what I said. It was carefully phrased.
Syria said Rumsfeld's statements were an attempt to divert attention from civilian Iraqi casualties in the war. A Syrian spokeswoman said Rumsfeld's charge is an absolutely unfounded, irresponsible statement. Sources tell CNN there is no new smoking gun with Syria. It is more a long-standing controversy about Syria's weapons proliferation. It also came on a day when Syria, at the United Nations, voted with the U.S. to restart the Iraqi oil for food program. On Iran, Secretary Rumsfeld said there are now hundreds of fighters backed by Iran on the Iraqi battlefield.
We have seen Badr Corps people moving into Iraq, and they report up through the Revolutionary Guard, and they're armed, and there are some additional ones that are close to the border. And my statement, I believe, and I hope, said something like this. that to the extent they interfere with General Frank's activities, they would have to be considered combatants.
While Secretary Rumsfeld's statements against Iran and Syria appeared surprising, sources tell CNN the White House knew he would make the statements and put both countries on notice. Barbara Starr, CNN, the Pentagon.
In ground operations today, Iraqi forces in southern Iraq shelled and machine-gunned civilians who were trying to flee the city of Basra. Almost 1,000 people did escape into British-controlled territory. They were given food, water, and medical treatment. Diana Muriel reports from southern Iraq, her photographer, Neil Halsworth.
More than 1,000 women and children, escorted by some men, tried to make it to safety from the city of Basra across one of the main bridges to the southern side where British forces are encamped. At about 9 o'clock in the morning, as the main group tried to make it across, a 4x4 vehicle drove onto the bridge. Behind it was mounted a machine gun and opened fire at what appeared to be the civilians on the bridge and the British forces at the other end of the bridge. A British tank came on to the bridge and fired at that vehicle, destroying it and killing 3 of the Fedayeen, or local militiamen, who were on and driving that vehicle. About 200 or 300 of the civilians fled back to the north side of the river.